Hey everyone, and welcome to Three Black Women and Their White Coach,
a podcast where we have a conversation around navigating race in the coaching industry.
And we're your hosts.
I'm Catrice Stetson, your mixed race internet bestie and serial entrepreneur who's built multiple businesses from the ground up.
And I'm Brianna Lachelle, your biracial nonprofit coach whose focus is on helping support nonprofit leaders and founders create impact-driven organizations that radically change their communities for the better.
Here at Three Black Women and Their White Coach, we dive into hard conversations centered around racial inequity within the coaching space with softness and grace.
Our hearts are to open up these conversations and create a safe space for people to be seen, learn, and create a better, more inclusive environment for all.
So pull up a chair, your favorite snack, and a bevy while you yap with your new biz besties as we work to make the coaching industry a place where we all feel welcome and respected.
In this episode, we're talking about code switching, the internal flipping, shape-shifting, and adapting that many Black women do to navigate white dominant spaces, including the coaching industry. We'll share personal experiences, define what code switching really is, explore why we do it, and discuss what it costs us. We'll also talk about how it shows up in coaching and what white coaches need to know if they want to create spaces where authenticity is safe, not performative.
Before we begin today's episode, we want to offer a reminder from the heart. In this conversation about code switching, we're sharing our lived experiences as Black women navigating coaching spaces, but we are not here to paint white coaches as villains or suggest that every Black woman is walking through the same story. Code switching is complex. It's not just about speech, it's about safety, survival, and self-protection. And while we're naming some hard truths today, we're doing it with love and deep care. This podcast isn't about blame, it's about building better understanding. We believe there's a space here for all of us to learn, reflect, and grow. So whether this topic is new for you or something you've lived 100 times over, we're glad you're here. Let's get into it.
Okay, so what is code switching? The definition is the act of adjusting one style of speech, appearance, behavior, or expression to conform to the dominant culture norms, usually to navigate spaces where one's natural identity is marginalized.
And to build off of that, it's rooted in the history of Black people adapting to survive in white-controlled institutions such as schools, jobs, the legal system, and it's inherited as a form of protection, but often required in places where being fully yourself isn't seen as professional or aligned.
And while we were doing the research for this, I was so excited because I didn't know this. Catrice, did you realize that there's different types of code switching?
I did not until we started doing like the research, and when you put this into the doc and the notes, I was like, wait, what?
I know. Okay, so there's different types of code switchings. If you didn't know like us, now you know. And so the two different types is first linguistics. And so it's changing how you speak, whether that's your tone, your vocabulary, your pronunciation. And then there's cultural/behavioral. And so that's hiding parts of your identity. That can look like your hair, your clothing, the emotions that you express, the boundaries that you have. It's crazy. And when I heard those, I was like, yeah, I've done that in all the spaces. And one, I didn't know that they were different. And two, I didn't realize that some of the things that I was doing was actually code switching. So I'd love to know, like, where is this actually shown up for you in your life, either in the coaching industry or personally?
I mean, where has it not? Like, let's be so fucking for real. Where has it not? But I think that with there being two different definitions, as, you know, prepping for this episode and when we were doing the research and going through outlines, when I saw that there were two types of code switching, I was like, how often have I done one thing linguistically, but cultural, behavioral wise, like it's different, but I'm doing them at the same time? Just a little fascinating tidbit that I just like thought of. I was like, how often? Because it truly isn't always a matter of, oh, it's if you are speaking differently and it also falls into the cultural and behavioral. Just because you're doing one thing does not mean you're code switching in both ways.
Mm-hmm.
I think that for me, I guess where I want to really dive in and begin this conversation is, I guess, just being mixed. Yeah. And really sitting in the space of For those of you who don't know, who maybe aren't watching the video portions of this podcast, I am very much mixed. I am a bit darker toned than Brianna, but my dad's black, my mom's white. And actually growing up, I was considered the white sister.
Me
I
too.
My siblings and I are a gradient. We all are roughly the same complexion. The skin tone is there, but I'm a lighter version on the spectrum of the gradient. And I think that I grew up going when I was in school, most of my classmates were white. When I was in first and second grade, I honestly, surprisingly, and this was so freaking cool, my teacher was a black woman, but I was the only black kid in my class. But I thought it was so cool. And for those of you who don't know, I actually went to school to be a sex ed teacher. And I had this conversation with my mom, who's also a teacher, about how impactful that was for me being little and seeing a black woman. And, obviously, women teachers, that's kind of one of the professions that growing up, they're like, oh my God, are you going to grow up and be a teacher? When they're asking the boys, like, are you going to be a doctor?
Yeah.
Um, but I think like taking that experience from being in elementary school, first and second grade, being the only black kid in my class. And there were a multitude of races. One of my best friends was Asian, and I can't remember what part of Asia, East Asia, her family's like from. But like it was a diverse class, but I was the only one who was black. And so I also made a lot of white friends, a lot of white passing friends. And when my siblings called me the white sister, it wasn't necessarily just because of where I fell into the gradient skin tone wise. It was
Mhm.
because I like Taylor Swift. I love a vanilla bean frappuccino from Starbucks. I'm not a big fan of rap music, but it's when it comes to code switching, part of it for me is also being so hyper aware of the fact of almost all of my life I've been surrounded, like, and I live in Seattle, for those of you who don't know, all these for those of you who don't know, little tidbits today. But I think context is so big because Brianna doesn't live in the same part of the country as me, but growing up in the PNW, I was surrounded by a lot of white people. I also was raised religious. I was raised in the LDS church. And if you're not sure what LDS is, it's Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, aka Mormon. And so as I grew up, I picked up different mannerisms and different linguistic language vocabulary that was very white. My siblings, though, had way more diverse classrooms. And so even sometimes it was code switching for me wasn't just like, oh, this is happening out in the world, but sometimes it was happening between me being out in the world, like going to school and then coming home and interacting with my siblings. Well, how was your experience like growing up? Give us some context, Brianna, into who you are and your lived life.
Yeah. So, I am also biracial. My dad is fully black, and then my mom is half and half. She's half white, half black. My mom's mom is white. So, growing up, I was around a lot of my white family. And then obviously when I was with my dad, we were with like my black side of the family. But growing up, I grew up in a single parent household. So a lot of my family dynamics was with my mom and my mom's mom side of the family. I was also the white girl of my family. Like if you called them up right now and was like, who's the white kid of the group? They're going to be like, it's Brianna. I am like, and even just down to like the amount of melanin I have. Cause like my siblings, if we go to the beach and hang out all day, they'll tan. I'm a burn. I'm gonna be beet red burn. like like to so many things, right? So like my mom, she'll call me the WG lovingly with endearment, but those things like sink in, right? And I also grew up like I was the smarty pants. I'm the eldest daughter, like you, Catrice. Like I was really into school, where my siblings were really into like sports and things like that. And so I was naturally around a lot of white people a lot of the time. And it's so interesting because being biracial, I think there's this, like this strange space that you can get in where like you're not white, you're not fully black, and you don't really know where you fit in, right? And you kind of, like you said, have to do a little bit of that code switching no matter where you're at, because for a long time, everywhere I went, I felt like I was trying to prove that I belonged there, right? So like a lot of times, even being around other black kids in my school, like there's the comments of, oh, you're speaking white, or with my white friends, like getting comments like, oh, you're really this for a black girl, or whatever, like you're really smart for a black girl, you make good grades for a black girl, like whatever. Like going into college, like being told, oh, the only reason why you got in is because affirmative action, you needed to meet a quota. And I'm like, my GPA, that's better than yours, says differently, but okay. But just having to deal with all of those different things, and we're going to talk even more about that in like microaggressions, but like having to figure out how to show up and like what was socially appropriate was like something I did all the time. I think linguistically, it was always annoying to me to be like, oh, you're speaking white, when I'm like, no, I just like words. I'm smart, I'm educated, I'm proud of that, and I speak educated. Like there's nothing wrong,
You're like,
like that's not.
I don't speak white, I speak educated. Thank
Yeah,
you
I
very
was
much.
like, white people don't have a monopoly on education, like with love and respect, and so like just having to break down those things. But then when I was looking at this like cultural behavioral, I think it's so interesting because like I feel like hair, especially between the two of us, is such a big
Yes.
one, right? Like for those of you who aren't watching the video portion, like I 9 times out of 10, you're gonna see me with straight hair. Catrice, she is my curly gal, and I am just obsessed with her curls. But even that within itself, on the rare occasions that my friends saw my hair curly, or if like we were at a swim party, or if I was doing a sleepover and they're like, oh, you didn't wash your hair, like those types of things all come up, and you have to learn how to navigate what that looks like. And the thing that we're really trying to communicate is the like tension that we as women of color and as black women feel when things like that are brought up, right? And those are the things that cause us to do the code switching, right? So having that tension, that feeling of otherness, that feeling of like we don't belong, makes it like the natural response is to adapt in a way that'll make people not think we're so different, that'll make people more comfortable, so that way we feel safe. And I think that that's like the big thing with code switching. Like we can give more and more examples, but it ultimately boils down to like we want to feel safe, and doing these things makes us feel like we're not the outsider of the group, whether it's with our black community, our white community, or whatever.
I remember in 2020 specifically, like going through all the Black Lives Matter stuff, like feeling this feeling of being, and again, it's everything we're going to be talking about on this podcast is so nuanced. There's so many layers, and Brianna and I being mixed, the experience of being fully Black or fully Hispanic, like when you are fully immersed in that culture and you look it's so different than us, where we can kind of like walk a line that's like we can get by with some things, but we can't get by with other things.
Yeah.
Like I'm the white sister until I'm not, like
Right.
I'm the white sister until my friends are like, oh, like your curls are really big today. It's like an afro, but they
Mm-hmm.
would never have that. Like there's so many different things, but I think 2020, the Black Lives Matter movement is, at a peak. Like everyone is stuck at home, but at the same time, we are all chronically online and we are all chronically getting really involved with what is happening in our society with social injustices and everything. And I I remember thinking so much about like where do I even
Yeah.
not where do I stand, but where I'm too white for some people, but I'm too black for others. Where do I
Can I
have
say
anything to
something?
actually stand on and speak up for?
Yeah.
And there's so many things in the political climate that we are in where, rights and morals and values and everything are really at a forefront. But I think that like so often I sit in these spaces and I just remember 2020, especially because at the time I was engaged to I was not engaged to this guy yet. It was later in the year that that we got engaged. But my ex fiance, he said the N word. Um, and I just was in this place of like, I don't say the N word because I just don't say the N word. I don't think anyone should say it. I very much stand in that boat, and I know that not everyone thinks that. And I know that sometimes it is a term of endearment for those in the Black community to a certain
Yeah.
degree. To me, I'm like, it's just a word I don't play with. But I remember he was singing a song. And again, it gets into the nuance of the situation. Like he was singing a song, we were with my siblings. He said the N word when like it was said in the song. And my siblings were like, holy shit. And I wasn't even like, holy shit, because he said it. I was holy shit because of their reaction to it. And I didn't know how to respond because
Yeah.
I don't believe anyone should say it. But my siblings are people who do say it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, really standing on that like place of one, I ultimately told him that I don't want to be with anyone who speaks like that and uses that language. That's like, I swear, but like, there are just some words that are off
Right.
limits.
Right.
But I remember in that moment feeling like and I remember having a conversation with my dad about this, and my dad being Black and everything. He was like, to some people, Catrice, you are too white to say something like that. And
Mm.
like to really come from a place of like, to even speak to my ex fiance in a place of like, you can't say that, but I can say that type of deal. Not that I was saying it, but I remember that specifically during 2020. It's the height of the Black Lives Matter, and my siblings then. I really, part of me is like, will they listen to this and like chastise me? Who cares? Ultimately, I'm living my truth. But like, I very much felt like I was not Black enough for my siblings because my reaction wasn't, holy shit, he said that. It was more, I went more into how do I do damage control on the situation. And I'm
Right.
also a very closed door person. I'm not someone who is going to go off at someone in front of others. Like, I'm going to wait until we are behind closed doors. It is private. But it became this like, I remember just having an identity crisis of like, who am I? Do I have anywhere to stand on?
Yeah.
And feeling like I was like so helpless, especially when it came to my siblings, because I was like, I wasn't good enough because I didn't go off and I didn't lash out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a lot.
That's hard. And I think 2020, man, because in that same vein, I had very similar feelings of like, okay, I am a Black woman. I was dating my now husband, who is a Black man, with the realization, like, I remember having a lot of thoughts of like, okay, I have Black family members. My brothers are Black and they're very evidently Black men. Like, they're not as light complected as me. I'm dating this man who is Black. If me and him end up staying together and having babies, they're going to be Black. And like, the aspect of that, like, I very much both experience it and see it intimately with people that I love and know personally and witness things that are being done to them, both, blatantly and like under the table type things. But having this feeling of that, like, I wasn't Black enough to have the authority to talk about it. And I think like that's even something that we talked about before starting this podcast. It was like we're Black women, but we're also biracial Black women. Can we really talk about a Black woman's experience? And it's like, yeah, we're Black. We can. But just like having those internal thoughts and conflicts of like, what can I say? And I remember seeing like a lot of my white friends posting one way or another. And some of those posts ended friendships, and some of them it was like this feels performative in ways, and that led to more conversations, you know. Or do you remember after the incident that happened with George Floyd and there's like blackout tiles on Instagram? Do you
Yes.
remember that trend? Okay.
Yes. The
So I
black squares.
I participated in the black squares, and I made a comment of like, you know, if you're posting a black square today but you're not listening to black people, if you're not actually shifting like how you're behaving in the world, then don't even post the black square. And then I posted like a black and white photo of me kind of like outlining some of my experiences and some of the things that had been said to me, some of the like things I'd seen with my own two eyes. And I remember getting the response of like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened." And I'm like, why would you not believe that that happened, you know? And just it became so evident to me that like bringing it even back to code switching is that like when we show up and we present ourselves in ways that are acceptable and tangible to people, sometimes I take that as a way to say things that are unkind, or they designate you like, oh, you're the cool black girl, or like you become like
Mhm.
the token black girl, which we're going to talk about in another episode more. But and it gives them, it almost makes them feel like they have the right to say certain things or to do certain things because you're like the cool one. And I wonder like, is that such an injustice both to ourselves and to them by like continuing to create spaces where we dampen ourselves to make them feel comfortable, and then their comfortability leads them to do things that we should check them real fast and we don't, you know? And like how that really impacts like how we show up and what conversations we're willing to have, and like where is the line of responsibility both like for ourselves and then for other people, especially in the context of coaching, of like where's the line and what's responsibility is whose, you know? What are your thoughts?
Mhm. So many thoughts. I truly am like it's so hard because it really comes down to like who are we going to assign this task? Like it is
Mhm.
your job to
XYZ.
XYZ, like whatever
Yeah.
that looks like. And I think about, that comfortability that comes with code switching. And I've seen this happen a lot in relationships that I've had. I mean, obviously, I have an ex-fiance who thought it was okay.
Mhm.
He didn't really want to have a conversation. He didn't really want to unpack it. When I slapped his hand, like it wasn't even like I went really hard, but he didn't want to have that conversation. That was such a red flag relationship, for a number of reasons. I think that there's that comfortability that comes from it, and especially in this, like, in the coaching space.
Mhm.
I I mean, I've had experiences with coaches where I even told you this. Growing up the way that I did, being around the people that I was around, sometimes I just don't always pick up on, like, when people, and it's not even like them being intentional about it, or they don't mean to, but when they say off color things,
Mhm.
when they say stuff and it's like, that was a little bit racist.
That was a little
Like,
bit uncalled for.
that was a little uncalled for.
Yeah.
Um,
I can think of instances like right now from how we met, but
no, but like that's the thing is like it's so hard because I sit and I've experienced this, and again, it comes to this responsibility. Is it like my responsibility to say something? Is it like not my responsibility to say something? And it's on the responsibility of the other person, other person, whether that's a coach, a friend, whoever. But I think that it's like so hard because in those moments with coaching in particular, where someone says something off color or it's a little bit racist or whatever, it puts me in this I'm in defense. Like I get put like I am thinking, one, how do I respond to this in a way that's not going to be perceived as angry. But two, I question, like, is that actually like they're in one, I'm very much someone who comes from good faith, like I'm gonna give you the benefit of a doubt,
Yeah.
but also being like, what made you think that it was okay to say that?
Yeah.
And it something that I did, or are you naturally like that? And I'm just now
Yeah.
seeing that. I can think of several times in which this has happened when we first met. And I think that that was like one of the hard things about when we met is there was so much happening to me that when I walked away from that experience, that retreat, where I was like, I let so much just slide.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's hard because, like, it's not one person's problem, right? And so when I think about like responsibility and whose job is it to do XYZ, I think we all have to take a little bit of personal responsibility. So like for ourselves, we have to recognize like, okay, am I being performative right now? Am I showing up as a performative person? And one, like, let's break it down even more. Why am I doing that? If I'm showing up performatively, why? Is it an insecurity that I have, or is it a safety measure that I put in place because of the space that I'm in? If it's a safety measure, okay, why am I in a space that I don't feel safe?
No, literally.
Why did I,
Why
how
am
did
I
I
here?
allow myself to be in a space that I don't feel accepted? Why am I paying to be in a space where I am not where I should be? Okay. So I think in those aspects, as clients, we have to start asking ourselves like, ooh, did we make a bad choice being in the space that we're in? Have we turned on this performative because we want our coach to like us, because we want to fit in, because we think that if we can take certain pieces of ourselves and do it just right, then we'll get this form of success. And I think that that's like a personal internal thing that we have to check ourselves of like, ooh, because I'll admit it, there's coaches that I've dreamed of working with and like not even starstruck, but just like, oh, wow. Like, I'm currently working with a coach right now that I've like watched from afar. And like, the first time I did a one on one with her, I was just like, oh my God. Like, SOS, this is crazy. But then I had to check myself and be like, ooh, she's just a person. Like, she's very successful. I respect her. I think she's great, but she's also just a person. And so I need to show up as myself because I can't get anything out of this coaching experience if I'm putting on a show to get her to like me. You know what I mean? So I think like as clients, we have to check ourselves and make sure we're not being performative. As coaches, I think it's really important that we're asking ourselves like, are we creating spaces that people can show up authentically? And like showing up, like, are we creating spaces that like we say is authentic but we're not actually creating spaces that like people feel safe in? Are we noticing that like, hey, when my clients in this setting they act this way, but when they're with me one-on-one they act this way? Like, what's the disconnect? Are we asking those questions? Are we being conscious? And also we need to be really conscious of like, okay, what are the things that we're saying and doing that might be making people uncomfortable even if they're not telling us? Like, where are like personal biases or personal perceptions that are coming into play in our coaching containers that is making it where people don't feel like they can be their full selves, whether that's happy, sad, angry, excited, whatever that looks like. And how do we make sure that we're allowing people to be authentic and not put on a show for us to make ourselves comfortable? And I think those are questions that we're not always asking as a coach because we're thinking about like, whatever they're paying, the result that they're paying us for. And I think like I don't think it's anybody's responsibility to be their client's therapist or anything like that, to like break down trauma with them or anything like that. By all means, don't do that. If you're not a therapist, don't do that. But I do think it's important for us to be conscious of the differences that our lived experiences could have, and creating opportunities for feeling of safety for people who don't look like us, no matter what your ethnicity is or who you're coaching. And sometimes we're not taking that piece into consideration because we're so focused on making our curriculum really good or our experience really good. But that experience can't be good if we're not thinking about those nuances and we're not paying attention on like how people show up. Because I think it's real, like if we really pay attention as a coach, we'll see when people start switching up. And then I think, especially if it's people of color or a black woman, if you're a white coach and you see, like, hey, when you're doing a one-on-one with Catrice, she's really bubbly and she's excited and she's talking and she's really out there. But when we do mastermind group calls, she's quiet, she's reserved, she doesn't laugh as much, she like is more timid. Then that should be a sign to you that maybe something's not right. I should check in with Catrice. I should try to understand why she doesn't feel safe to show up as the person that I've seen her show up as, either online or with me personally. And I think sometimes as coaches, we're really busy and we're not thinking about those things. But I think that makes all the difference in the success of our clients and also like the type of coach that we are, you know?
No, truly. And I think that with that, I mean, there's so many layers to code switching in terms of like how we show up. And I can think of so many different times where I think, here's the path I want to walk down is the idea of like also coming from a place of understanding as a coach that your client may like who is a person of color, maybe, let's be real, having an identity crisis.
Mm,
And I think showing up online heightens it for me
mm, yeah,
personally.
yeah.
Like I show up on, and we all do it, whether you are white, black, purple, blue, like indigo, we all show up one way online and we are totally different people offline.
Yeah.
You cannot tell me that I don't believe that there is a single person in this world who shows up exactly how they are in person as they do online. I just don't like the work that we would have to go through as a person to really be able to break down all the walls and barriers that stand between us and being allowing people into that. Like it's so vulnerable. And I
Yeah.
think that sometimes like I I sit in this place where I'm like, am I enough me?
Mm,
And who is me? Who am I?
yeah.
Because I will show up one way on my Instagram stories and stuff, and it's not that it's not me, but it's a different version.
Yeah.
But then how I show up to a coaching call is going to be so different, but also recognizing that not only do I code switch for the sake of, oh, like showing up online versus in person is different, and the way that you're going to get likes and comments and sales, like that all plays into how we show up online, because like let's be real, we're trying to make money,
Right.
and
Yeah.
we're gonna jump however high we need to in order to like make the
Make the
money.
money. Yeah.
I mean, there are some lines you shouldn't cross, but like, you know, but I think that with that, there's this extra layer as a woman of color where I constantly am sitting in this place of, and I mean, you've probably had this where a coach meets you in person. They're like, whoa, you're so different in person. Like, but I'm like, there's so many layers that go into how I show up online.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And to be digestible for the masses, because let's be real, something like Reels and TikTok where my face is getting pushed out to the masses,
Mm-hmm.
it's so different. But also recognizing that I and I think that and not that we need a trophy. I do not need a trophy, but I think that sometimes coaches don't recognize when I've shown up in a space and I am truly authentic, like how rare that is.
Mm. Mm.
And I think sometimes the coaches who do try to put a gold star or like compliment the fact that I'm being me and they're like, wow, I really love like this side of you. I'm like, it adds to this internal stress when you point out and identify that like I am showing up in a way that is a little bit more authentic, that's a little bit more raw, maybe a little bit more perceived as angry Black woman, where I am allowing myself to be a bit more passionate about something. It takes so much for me to be able to show up in that way with someone who is not, who doesn't look like me.
Yeah.
And trying to show up online is like, I think that's a big thing. If there's one, not, I hope you get a lot of, for those of you listening, I hope you get a lot taken away from this. But I think that so often we get so caught up in this idea of authenticity, and it's a buzzword online and it's celebrated until it's not.
Yeah.
But also understanding that as a woman of color, if you're a white coach and you're coaching women of color, the being celebrated until we're not, that line, I don't even know how to measure it in distance, but like white women are a little bit more digestible.
Mm-hmm. Even if they say outrageous stuff.
Even if you say the most outrageous thing, you're a little bit more digestible and you're going to be seen as more authentic between your online and your in-person persona than a woman of color who, there's so many hurdles and so many things that we're having to do to even just like our hair.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
thinking about the retreat or thinking about any sleepover that I've had,
Literally.
I like to wear my hair up in a high ponytail when I'm going to be staying out, like staying the night somewhere, so then I don't have to worry as much about trying to do my hair the next morning. Because I'm not
Mm-hmm.
going to do a full, like sometimes I just don't got time to take a shower and brush my hair out because my hair, God forbid, I have to brush my hair dry. God forbid.
No. Yeah. And I think it's really hard because oftentimes code switching is viewed as being like professional. It's viewed as being digestible, right? And so when we stop doing those things, there's usually some type of fallout from that. And so things that we can start like doing and thinking about is like, what does it actually mean to be professional? Why does it look, why do you think that, right? And giving people the opportunity to show up to the extent that they feel safe and realizing that it's like a sliding scale, right? And I know like I've talked to some people um who like I've had these conversations and they're like, so you just like lie about who you are on a daily
No,
basis?
not the lies. I
So
hate.
you're just pretending? And I'm just like, no, you missed
I'm
it.
like,
You missed the point.
I'm like, I wish this was just a switch I could turn off.
Yeah. But it's so ingrained. And like we're saying, there's so many layers, and there's so many different types. And it's just like it becomes like who you are in so many ways. Like I don't wake up and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna be this version of Brianna for this event. I'm gonna be this version of Brianna at home. I'm gonna be this version of Brianna with my friends. It no, like that's psychotic to think that that's like what people are doing, that they're just like, oh, I like this flip because I'm gonna do this because I know XYZ person is gonna like me and they're gonna give me money, and then I'm gonna flip this lever on over here because XYZ. No,
And I'm going to rehearse
no,
this script before I go into this event so then I make sure that I have all the buzzwords ready to go for this. No,
no.
that's not how it works. I
No.
wish, because then I'd be able to stop.
Well, yeah, and then when we talk about this even more, it's like it becomes so ingrained in your personality that you don't know who you are anymore. Like so much of the last like year and a half of my life has been me trying to uncover who Brianna is. And I know a lot of it has to do with because I've code switched so much of my life. And just even talking more about like me personally. So I started a nonprofit when I was 16. So I was a 16-year-old founder. I was black. I was a teenager. I had no one, like, I had no connections. I had no degree. And so I used professionalism as an armor. Like, I cackle sometimes thinking about some of the things that I would do. So, like, when we would have business meetings with like possible funders and things like that, like, I went and bought pencil skirts and like the jackets, and I had heels on. And like, I'm 16 and look outrageous. Like, let's just be honest. Outrageous. But
I
in
can
my
just
head, I was
imagine post. I'm like post production. Here's an image of.
like, but like, it's just like crazy. And like, everyone told me that I was too young, that I wasn't qualified, that I couldn't do it. And so, how I thought I could earn respect is by putting on this professional hat of what I thought professionalism was, and putting on this armor and saying the right words, code switching into what a successful older nonprofit CEO who had all of her stuff together would be. And that became like my badge of honor. That became my wall. And now going into coaching and realizing that there's lots of, like, I love the nonprofit space. I think it's so important, but there's so many like antiquated systems that I hate. And I'm like, I can't burn this thing down if I'm still playing into this idea that I have to look and feel and be the certain way. And so I've worked with coaches that are like, Brianna, you're angry, be more angry. And I'm like, bro, that's not professional. And they're like, what does being professional mean? And I'm like, I don't know. The things in my head tell me what it means, but I'm not sure if that's even true
The
anymore, you know?
voices. It's the voices. It's the other versions of you. They're like, this is professional.
Yeah.
Shut up. That's not professional.
Exactly. In a non-psychotic, like, don't need to be committed way, but you know what I mean?
But
Like,
like,
these are really things that are happening on a subconscious level that I have to actively fight against. And so to have someone tell me, oh, so you just lie, you just pretend, it's like, bro,
I
no.
can't. I
Like, I'm
can't.
unlearning. And so I think that's also something that I would love for white coaches who are listening. Like, if you have a client who is in process of unlearning years, decades of code switching, of like putting on, and they're actively trying to figure out like who they are, what their lines are, what their authentic voice is, um like, being a safe space for them is such an honor that they trust you enough to do that, but also such a responsibility to make sure that you aren't furthering like those misconceptions that they have to be XYZ, that that them having to put on a mask is like a requirement to be taken seriously, or things like that. And just giving them the space to practice what it looks like to show up in the version of themselves that they're learning and that's actively becoming, you know? And giving them grace that when you tell them to show up authentically and they do a rehearsed thing that you've talked about in coaching sessions, or that you thought that they were over, it's not that they're being difficult, it's not that they're being uncoachable, it's that this is an active thing that they are rewriting their brain on how to show up, of what it means to be them. And so giving them the space and the grace and the opportunity to like figure it out is also such an important thing, because it's not a switch. No black woman's going to wake up tomorrow and be like, I'm done code switching, I'm never doing it. That's not realistic, right? Like, that's not how
It's
it happens,
not.
because it's not a switch. It's not just something you turn on and off. It's something that we've learned, we've been, really taught how to do. It's ingrained in us. It's become something as natural as like breathing. And so to start unbuilding those walls and start refiguring it is hard, and it's tiring, and it's emotional, and sometimes it's easier to put on the mask so you can survive than to actively fight people's perceptions, people's thoughts, and your own like internal conflict to try to figure out what the next thing is for yourself and for your coaching business as a client. It's a lot of work. It's so nuanced. There's so many levels. And I think that we should be so much more conscious of it. And even if you're not actively helping your client do that work, like showing them that you see them and that you recognize that they're doing that work, for me, would be life changing, like, and it
Yeah.
matters,
Yeah. So I'm curious, Brianna, because you mentioned, 16-year-old Brianna starting the nonprofit, wearing the pencil skirts, because professional.
Profesh.
When did you first, I guess, become conscious of your code switching?
Mm, I think really it became more, I became aware of it, but wasn't able to name it during that season when I first started my nonprofit. That's when it became like really clear, because it was such an exaggerated version of what I was already doing, right?
Yeah.
Like I was already doing a lot of the things that was code switching unconsciously, but then when I tried to step into this realm that I felt completely unqualified for and unprepared for, and I was like overcompensating, it really, like, I had professional CEO Brianna. And she was like, it was like an armor that I put on. And that was when
Yeah.
I really recognized, like, ooh, okay, there's something going on here. I don't know what it is, but there's something going on here because I feel like I'm arming up in this exaggerated way. But then I didn't really recognize that it was actually code switching until I started doing coaching probably 5 years ago, when I realized that I still had that armor on and I was actively fighting against it because it no longer served me. Like, once I became like my early 20s and I was starting to coach other people into the freedom of being an unlikely founder, a non-traditional founder, and realizing that there was all these layers that I wanted to shed because I didn't want to be the traditional founder. I wasn't. And so trying to fit that mold of what I thought it wasn't helping, and then trying me showing up that way and then telling other people to show up differently wasn't meshing
Mhm.
anymore. And then I realized, oh, that's what that is. And so that became a whole identity crisis within itself, because I was like, I've been doing this the whole time and I didn't even know, and so who am I? you know it was really that identity crisis.
You're like, am I even real?
Do I even know anything? And it's like, yes, girl, calm down.
Like,
But like,
just
even
take a
today,
beat.
and then it took years of working through my messaging, working through my coaching message, working through, like, just my copy and everything, to recognize that I'm a mad as hell woman who wants to radically change the nonprofit space. And to be able to boldly say that is, and because that's off putting to people. That's off putting to the
Yeah.
traditional nonprofit space, to be like, I think
Mhm.
nonprofits are the right way. How we're doing it is trash. That's like off putting, right? But it took so long for me to like recognize those are my true feelings, and I was masking them because I thought it was the right thing to do. And then how to actively come out of that situation and then teach other people to do it. Still a work in progress, but much more aware of it now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. I I mean, I was also in high school.
Yeah.
High school is such a identity shifting, finding, creating moment, high school and
Yeah.
college.
Yeah.
I mean, I was 18, maybe 17, 18, so senior year of high school. And I've told you this story before, but for me, it wasn't this like, oh, I'm outwardly doing something and I feel it. Like you said, like you were like, this is an exaggerated, you know,
Hmm.
wow, like we had already crossed one line and like we have now crossed like so much further past that line. You were like,
Right.
hold up, who am I?
What am I doing?
What are we? Is this me?
Who am
Like,
I?
but and I can't for the life of me. I've literally tried searching for, and I know on some flash drive I have this essay still, and I can't remember what the prompt was. I don't know if they have this in your area, but in Seattle, in at least in the Kent School District, so south of Seattle, they offer in the high schools like college and the high school courses. So I was
Mhm.
taking University of Washington courses while still actively going to high school.
Right.
And I took an English class. I love writing. I've always loved writing. I'm honestly surprised that I didn't follow through with having a blog and went more the podcasting route in life. But for the life of me, I wish I knew what the prompt was, but I wrote this essay and it was like one of those long, like college-esque long
Mhm.
essays that dove into my experience growing up mixed. And I think that I was aware, like, I mean, I said at the beginning, towards the beginning of this episode, first and second grade, I was hyper aware of the fact that I was the only Black girl in my classes.
Yeah.
I was very hyper aware. And I wrote about this in this essay where I talked about, started really diving into the history of code switching and why does a person of color like me do that.
Mhm.
That I really started unpacking it because I was someone who, like I said, was raised LDS. I was raised in the Mormon church. And it's very interesting because nowadays we have like the secret lives of Mormon wives. It doesn't fully show the, or at least, and I think it's a very different experience being in a Utah Mormon versus being in the PNW. But like I grew up being so worried about the being the perfect Mormon, like the perfect mold of
Mhm.
what does it mean to be Mormon. And my mom would always ask me, she'd be like, "But what does that mean? What does that look like? Like why do you think that you're not good enough?"
Yeah.
But then I would go from that to doing sports, and I did soccer, cross country, and track growing up. And that was, especially, and what I was known for on the soccer field was my speed.
Mm.
I was known for my speed. And so then like I got into track and cross country, and so but then the way that I showed up at church wasn't how I showed up for sports practices, and the way I showed up for soccer wasn't the way that I showed up for track
For
and cross
track.
country.
Mhm.
And then I was in choir, and I also, on top of being in choir, I was like at the high school, I was also the sound technician for the jazz choir. And as I started unpacking my experience of being mixed and how I felt like, not black enough and not white enough, I started unpacking this like realization of like all this code switching I had been doing
Right.
and realizing that I was hopping like I remember 18, I did a birthday party for myself and I was telling my mom how anxious I was to have all of my friends meet each other because
Oh,
everyone stayed in their own boxes.
right.
Like I would show up one way at church, one way at soccer, one way here, one way there. And I hardly ever had friends that actually crossed
Right.
over into another aspect of my life. And I was so anxious. And I remember being at my 18th birthday, and this was after I'd written this essay and realizing how for different friends, I talked differently. I showed up differently. I was comfortable wearing my hair in certain like hairstyles differently. Like it was, I was like, this is insane.
This is crazy. Yeah.
I was like, who am I?
Yeah.
And also, I think the hardest part is really being able to tell ourselves that though every version is us, but then
Mm.
really distilling it to being like, okay, but who, like, if there was one version, well, who is she? What does
Yeah,
she
what does
look
that
like?
look
What does she
like?
say?
Yeah.
Because every version was me. And honestly, my mom, she did so good and my mom didn't grow up with a mom. Her mom passed away when she was young. So that layer of like the way that my mom showed up for me with the fact that she was white and
Mm.
raising a of color child, and I have four younger siblings, and my mom did such a amazing job. Like I'm literally going to call her after this and be like, "Mom, I love you." But she did such a good job at making sure that I felt whole at home, and especially with her.
Yeah.
And like anytime that I would come from this like I have no clue who I am, I'm showing up differently, and all these people are meeting, and what if like, and it wasn't like I was keeping secrets. or like lying, but it was like, how do I,
Become the version that they all accept.
yeah, like how do I become that version and how can I show up to my birthday party
Yeah.
and not be like called a fake or a phony, you know?
Yeah. That you're pretending, that you're lying. Yeah.
Yeah, that I'm lying. I think the people, and I've had people say that to me too, people who say that are bonkers. Like, bonkers.
Respectfully,
Like,
you don't know what you're talking
respectfully,
about.
if I could turn it off, I would. It would probably save
Yeah.
me so many tears.
Yeah, and so much brain power. It's so crazy because you don't recognize those things until you have like an experience like that where you're like at the birthday party. Like I think that's such a beautiful example of like what it is to experience code switching like internally is when like all of the pieces collide and then you're like, "Oh,
You're
which
like,
part of myself shows up here when everybody from all pieces of my life are here and I look slightly different to each one of them. How do I show up when they're all in one space?" Crazy.
insane. And it's so hard. I
Yeah.
think I would be so curious to have conversations with other people of color about like when did they, I think, yeah,
Recognize. So,
that's
hey,
that's
if
the
you're listening to this
icebreaker.
right now, yeah, and you're a woman of color, please drop us like a comment or send us an email. Tell us when's the first time you recognized that you were actively code switching. And then, white coaches, you can climb in on this too. When have you ever noticed one of your clients code switching and like how did you handle that situation? Have you ever noticed it?
Have you ever noticed it? I really hope that one of you who is listening, one of you white coaches slides in and like says something. I'd just be so curious. Like it's
Yeah.
when Brianna and I were outlining the episodes and what did we want to talk about and we were like, okay, this first season it's going to be a limited series. We don't know if we're doing a second season.
Yeah.
We were so selective and I was so excited for this episode because it means so much to me. I think that there's so much that I'm unpacking and unlearning, but like, and I think we were sitting on the fence of this, Brianna. I definitely think we're doing an episode on hair.
I think we have to.
I'm putting it right here in this episode. We will definitely be recording an episode on hair. But like even like how I show up in my relationship. So my fiance Reese, who is gonna be when this episode drops,
A husband.
is gonna be my husband. Oh my god, that's crazy. That's crazy. He's white. And he's never seen me with straight hair. But my ex-fiance had. My sisters are actually comment not super frequent, but it's frequent in the sense of like it's not a normal topic that gets talked about, but the fact that they haven't seen me with my straight hair in a really long time. But I think it's like there's so much to be unlearned and unpacked, but I also am so comfortable now compared to when I was 18 and had this earth-shattering realization that there were like a bajillion versions of me.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I'm not exactly where I want to be, and I'm not yet the woman that I would love to become. I'm on
Mhm.
my journey there, but like the growth that's happened is so big. And I think that my one thing is like for the women of color who are listening, like you are perfect exactly where you're at right now. Like you are doing the best that you can. And I think that if this is the first time that you're being even, and that'd be kind of a little wild, I'm gonna be honest. If this is your introduction to code switching, what a wild introduction to it.
Can you imagine somebody's listening and they're like, "Oh my god, that's what I'm doing?" If that's
Yeah.
you, I'm sending so much love. Oh my gosh.
Sending so much love. Please slide into the DMs. Please slide into the email. Let us help you because we definitely know that it can be hard to
Yeah.
unpack. But you are like you are you and you are special and you are worth being loved and seen. And I know that sometimes it can be so hard to show up, but also be aware of like the rooms that you're stepping in, and do the people that you're surrounding yourself with allow you to really like take off all the masks, because that's what it is. Like it's not like we're purposefully putting on a mask, but we are, it's safety. It's
Yeah.
okay, I can't speak like this. I can't speak like that. Like something I just realized is that I have not sweared very much on between recording episode 2 and us recording episode 1. I have not sweared very much on these episodes. And I am definitely someone who swears more. And again, it comes down to like the professionalism of it. And Brianna is way more professional than I am. Like when I look at Brianna, I'm like, oh my gosh, she is so professional and put together. And like I aspire to be like her one day.
Oh my
I'm a little bit more
gosh.
messy. I'm a little bit more messy.
Stop.
But like I think that it's just so important to know that you are perfect exactly the way that you are and who
Yeah.
you are. Like it's just, yeah, I think that's like the biggest lesson to be learned from unpacking your code switching is like you are perfect exactly how you are.
Yeah. I think for me, like, I have two things. So if you're like a white coach listening right now and you want like a really tangible thing that you can start doing, is instead of telling your clients of color to be yourself, I want you to start telling them you don't have to perform here. Huge.
Yeah, that's good.
Huge.
That's
Because
massive.
even because sometimes they don't know who they are. Like if you get anything from this right now, we are actively, and I think most people, whether you're black or white, you're in process of figuring out who you are, and that's beautiful and that's okay. And I think those journeys look really different, and ethnicity and race has a place to play in that, right? But sometimes you don't know who you are, and so telling your clients that they don't have to perform in your presence gives them the ability to start figuring out what that means and what that looks like, and to take off the weight that they might not be able to name, right? I think if you're a woman of color or a black woman who's listening right now, I think the biggest thing that I would love for you to hear is that you get to choose who you are. And that I think sometimes there's this idea that, like, throwing it back to my example, when I speak articulately, it's because I like words. I like education, and that has nothing to do with me trying to be white. And so even if it what you choose is your like truest version of you, even if it doesn't match what society or what culture says is black, that doesn't mean that you're not being authentically you. Like you get to choose the parts of yourself that's you, and you get to choose
Yeah.
the parts of you that makes you feel good and most like yourself. And even if it doesn't match the expectation, whether it's from no matter who it's from, that's okay, because that doesn't have anything to do with you. And so I think being okay to step into the fact that you are the boss of this journey. Like you get to actively start figuring it out, and it's not going to happen all at once, right? Like I am in process of figuring out what it means and what it looks like to be a black woman, to be biracial, to be a mother, to be a wife, to be a sister, to be a friend. And like I pray that I'm in a different place 5 years from now than I am right now. That's growth. You're going to change, you're going to evolve. Things that used to work isn't going to work anymore. And you're going to find new tools and objects. But the main thing is that you don't have to show up someplace and perform. You can show up and be whoever it is that you want to be in that season, in that moment. And that as you grow and as you figure things out, it's okay to change. It's okay to evolve. It's okay to say, I've learned better, so I'm going to do better. And as you're going through that journey, sticking with the people who make you feel loved and seen and supported, that's the best place to be, because anybody who thinks that you're lying about code switching or being a fake, they just don't get it. And if they've listened to this, if if you have people in your life like that, go ahead and send them this episode and let them know, hey, I think you might get something out of that. And if they're still like,
I think you might learn something.
And if they're still like, I think that's fake, I mean, boo, lovingly, respectfully, I might say it's time to dust your hands of them and move on, because you deserve to be in spaces where you feel safe enough to show up however it is that you want to show up, and where you feel safe enough to be your full self, no matter what that looks like. And sometimes we're going to code switch for safety, we're going to code switch for survival, and that doesn't take away the progress that you're actively doing right now. my I like I'm in therapy because who isn't? It's 2025 and life is crazy, right? But one of the things that my therapist has told me that has been so freeing for me is that just because you know about your trauma now doesn't mean you have to burn your life down and start brand new things. Sometimes you're allowed to make an active choice to sit in your trauma, to sit in your code switching, to sit in whatever bad habit you need to survive, and make that active choice so that way you can survive to do the work on it to get to where you want to be. Because getting off of this episode and then burning your whole life down isn't going to help you, right? Like deciding that like, hey, I'm never code switching again and all these people suck and X, Y, that's not helpful. I don't advise
Please
that.
don't cold turkey. Please don't cold turkey your code switching.
Like, and so like being okay with the thing is like become aware of it and then actively choose how you want to handle it, and that gives you some of your power back from like it being a subconscious thing to like okay, I know that this isn't me showing up fully as myself, but I need to do this time to be able to get through this meeting, to be able to get through this coaching call, to be able to get through this event. And next time, I'll help prepare myself to be able to make a different choice if that feels aligned for me. And giving yourself the space to grow and evolve and like take these small steps forward. I think that that's really the place that we should strive for, because we're constantly evolving. It's going to continue to change.
For sure. Brianna, I think they're ready for a heart check.
Okay, so today's heart check for our listeners of color, I want you to ask yourself, where in your life or work are you switching to survive? And what might it take to come home to yourself? What do you need to start feeling safety within your space and within your body, to let down some of the walls that you're in, the armor that you're actively displaying? Where's one place in your life that you feel like you don't have to perform, and how can you lean into that and bring that into other spaces? For our white coaches, I'd love for you for our white coaches, I'd love for you to ask yourself, are you creating a space where your people feel able to show up without performance? How are you having these conversations of what it means to support your listeners of color? And what would it look like for you just to become more aware of people of color in your life and what things they might be doing in different spaces, and have a conversation with them? Not a blame conversation, not an accusation conversation, but an actual like, hey, Catrice, I noticed you do XYZ thing in this meeting, but when we're with these sets of people, you do XYZ. Can you tell me more about that? How does that feel for you? What is your experience with this? Get really curious. Don't accuse anybody of anything. Please, for the love of God, please do not do that. But just become really curious and start creating a safe space for your people to unmask and not perform and be more fully themselves, or at least feel safe enough to start exploring what that means. So I hope that's helpful. Let us know what you come up with, or if you're getting stuck, or if you'd like to have more conversations around what this experience looked like for you and when you first realized that you were code switching.
And that's a wrap. We're 3 Black women and their white coach, and this conversation is just at the start.
Friends, thanks so much for joining us today.
We've loved getting to spend this time here with you, but don't let the conversation stop here. Drop us a message or connect with us on social media. All the details can be found in the show notes,
along with some great resources to help you on this journey of helping make the coaching industry more inclusive. Until next time, we're 3 Black women
and their white coach.
doing the work, holding the space, and building something better.